Well, we've reached the top of the hour and I'm delighted to welcome everyone to today's webinar, The Contact Centre of the Future. I'm Rachel and I'm your webinar chairperson today, and delighted to welcome a panel of brilliant experts. I don't think they need an introduction, but we're going to do it anyway. Welcome back, Nicola Millard from BT. Would you like to share a bit for people who don't know you? We're not sure who.
I know, I'm sure everyone does know me because I've been around a very long time. My name's Nicola. I was BT's futurologist. As always, I got really tired of the crystal ball jokes. So I am now rather boringly known as a principal innovation partner. So I am part of BT's innovation team. I am a psychologist. So I look at the most disruptive part of innovation, which is, of course, not necessarily the technology, it's us. And where better to look at that than in the contact center space, where we've got lots of people and lots of technology all interacting with each other.
Brilliant. Well, welcome back. And welcome back as well to Paul Wield, Contact Center Innovator, another innovator in our midst.
Yep. So yeah, 30 years background in the industry, in technology, in consultancy, and I'm supporting today thinking about the operations of the future.
Brilliant. Well, we're looking forward to that as well. And also delighted to welcome back Tamsin Dolan from Nice in Contact. Welcome back, Tamsin.
Thank you. Nice to be here. My name is Tamsin and I'm with the product marketing team at Nice CX1. And hello from Canada. If anyone's calling in from Canada, hello.
Brilliant. Well, we've got all over the world apparently. So to today's webinar, just a reminder that we are taking a recording of today's webinar. If you did want to share what is going to be a brilliant webinar with your team later on, and that will be available later on this afternoon. So today's discussion is going on in our chat room. It's already buzzing along. So to join that, it's cch.chat or callcenterhelper.com/chat. It is in a separate window, but hopefully if you've got a big enough screen, you can put it side by side, or I've got a second monitor, very lucky, or you can put it on your mobile phone and have the chat room running alongside. A couple of added bonuses is that you can download a copy of all our speaker slides. Lots of information on there. I know we're coming up to Nicholas, who's got some brilliant stats, so I definitely recommend downloading them here. And we are running our very trusty bottle of champagne, box of chocolates, or even an Amazon gift card for the best tip. You just need to write #predict if you have a prediction for us, #question to ask the panel a question, or to share your tips, #tip. So before we get into Nicola's presentation, I'm just going to share a quick poll, which was, what was your fastest growing channel last year? So I'm going to share that now. Was it voice? Was it email? Was it social, chat, SMS messaging, or video? What was your fastest growing channel last year? Nicola, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I mean, to be honest, looking at some of our network data with our customers, voice got really, really popular last year, and I will explain why. But I think there are other channels that are growing. Video, I will explain, has got a niche, but I do think chat is always showing a potential for amazing amounts of growth.
Well, I'm going to share the results. Yep, chat came out top, 34%. It was very close actually. At the final point it was pinched by chat, but voice was actually coming up quite closely behind, 29%, 15% email, 12% social, 5% SMS and 5% video. So I'm going to stop sharing those results and let Nicola take you through her presentation.
Okie dokie. So this is always the first test. I've got off mute, which is always a good thing. The second thing is being able to share your slides. So hopefully you can see those.
We can just need to put them There we go.
There we go.
Perfect.
We're on full screen. That's excellent. I've passed the test, hopefully. Keeping fingers crossed. Yeah, I mean, those of you who've seen me present before know that we quite regularly do this survey called the Autonomous Customer, which, as it suggests, is all about customers and their behaviors and their attitudes, and really, you know, what they think about service, what they want to do with channels, and how they want to interact with large organizations around the world. So you may have said, because we've been doing this for a very long time as well. So our first survey was back in 2010, where we were quite modest, and we just looked at customers in 2 countries. And like any good piece of research, we try and take a representative demographic, age, etc., etc. And then we got more and more ambitious. And then February last year was our 10th anniversary. So we launched it with a massive fanfare, 12 countries, and then well, the pandemic hit. And normally we only do this every 2 years. And we weren't due to do one this year, but because it has been an extraordinary year, we decided we were going to do an extraordinary version of the research. So we wanted to see really how the pandemic had changed things for both customers, but also uniquely this year, we've also looked at agents. So we've taken a sample of agents, 300 agents across the US, the UK and India, just to find out how their pandemic has been. So what I'm going to do is, it's going to be quick, I warn you, because we don't have too much time. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a flavor of some of the things that we found. Now, obviously, a lot of behaviors have changed during the pandemic. I probably, you know, maybe a couple of years ago, probably wouldn't have thought that I would be sitting in my kitchen doing this presentation rather than in a physical space somewhere. But I am doing this in the kitchen. So things like working from home, definitely that's shifted. The video culture that we've evolved, I always say I now get up every morning with an impending sense of Zoom. So we're getting much more used to usage of video. And of course, you know, I think largely when you talk to experts, they generally think that we've seen maybe 3 to 5 years worth of digital acceleration in, frankly, less than 6 months. So there have been a lot of behavioral changes that we can see, but actually, largely customers' attitudes to customer service haven't changed an awful lot. I think they gave us a period of grace during the first few months of the pandemic where they were a little bit more forgiving. But if we look at the stats here, you can see largely they expect incredibly good customer service. They want things to be easy. It's quite interesting that we are seeing a hike in people saying that they're finding things tiring and exhausting. But frankly, we're in a pandemic. Pandemics are by their nature tiring and exhausting. And I think the last thing that customers want really is us as organizations making it even more tiring and exhausting. We're also seeing, we always see a seesaw between convenience and price. And again, we're seeing it tip more towards convenience. Again, you know, the pandemic, we're getting a lot of people doing home shopping and really consuming things in their local area. So the hyper-localization type theme is maybe trumping price at this point in time. I think more worryingly, what we're seeing is, given that we only did the last research a year ago, we were seeing a worrying trend about the digital customer experience emerging then, and that was having a ripple back effect on the contact center. So I think we're still getting worrying data out there. So 82% of people are still saying that they can't do some of the basics online sometimes. So even paying for stuff or changing their mind or scheduling stuff still is not necessarily as easy as it should be. And of course, if it's not, they will channel shift. So what channels do they shift to? Now, this is a graph. I love graphs. I apologize, but this graph makes me especially excited because I am that sad, basically. But this is UK data. Everything else you're going to see in the presentation is actually the global average. This is UK specific. And the reason I've done it is because the UK and the US have been the only 2 countries that we've done consistently across the whole of the 5 iterations of the research. But what this does is plot the ebbs and the flows of channel choices. So we ask customers, you know, when you do need to contact an organization, what channels do you use? And we can see these ebbs and flows. It's quite interesting that firstly, we're not seeing any sort of obvious rips and replaces. So we're not seeing one channel. So we may have assumed that maybe chat would have subsumed email. That has not happened. What we effectively see is the more channels you add, the more channels customers use, oddly enough. So, you know, how complex do you want your life to be? I think is one very big strategic question. We're still seeing the old and the, frankly, I mean, they're boring channels really, because they've been around a long time, but they are still standing up. So things like the phone has been and is still the #1 contact channel choice. It's intriguing that in the previous iteration in 2019, we actually saw the phone grow because it had been descending gradually. And again, I think that was symptomatic of the fact that when people struggle with the digital channels, they tend to do digital first. And when they can't do it, they shift to channels like the phone. So that's a very reliable and trusted channel. We're certainly seeing, I mean, web chat's been an interesting one because, you know, the peak of the hype cycle on that in 2017, we saw it going up. And I still think it has potential to go up because there are a lot of things that customers like about chat, a record of the conversation being one of them. But again, I think we saw a massive fall again in 2019 in preference. And again, I think particularly with synchronous chat, so live agent chat, I think that experience can be somewhat patchy because we know that agents are on multiple concurrent sessions, and that shows in the conversation. So I think we are looking at an appetite in the chat space to do less synchronous stuff, or at least if we do synchronous stuff, it might be more one-on-one rather than three conversations per agent as complexity goes up as well. But more on the asynchronous chat. We're seeing that in things like growth of WhatsApp, not huge growth in the UK so far, but if I'd showed you the Brazilian data, for example, WhatsApp is just soaring as a channel in places like Brazil and Asia. So I think that shows an appetite for growth. And then we're not seeing, particularly in service anyway, a massive growth in social media. And largely that's because it's all in public and it's a classic channel shift channel. We have to shift them off the social media channel and onto a one-to-one channel of your choice in order to have a conversation. So again, that adds to the complexity. That doesn't mean you can ignore social media, and it does depend on your sector. Broadly, I mean, I've kind of had an obsession because I'm a psychologist around, I'm not that interested in the channels. I'm more interested in why people use those channels. And over the years, we've plotted the fact that customers don't care about channels. They have a goal and they have an intention state behind that goal. And typically that intention state is positive, negative, or neutral. And that tends to determine their channel choice over and above things like age and demographic. So visionaries, positively motivated customers, they want to do what they're doing. They're getting married. Do you remember planning a holiday? That sort of thing. Maybe renovating their house. So they're willing to spend time, energy, and effort doing this. They use lots of channels. They may be paranoid. They may need some advice, but largely they're easy customers to deal with as long as you don't confuse them or frustrate them. Because if you do that, they flip into a very different kind of customer, which is negative, customers in crisis, or we start in crisis. And I think that's why we're seeing the growth of the phone during the pandemic. We have seen not any call volumes dropping off at all at the moment because we're in crisis. A pandemic is a crisis. And crisis customers, negatively motivated customers, typically want to interface with human channels. They want them to be quick. They want them to be easy. They want to be simple. And that's why the phone tends to be their primary choice, although they'll go to other choices as well, like chat. Although, again, would you email the fire brigade if your house is burning down? Probably not. I think that's a big question we need to ask. Utilitarian customers are neutral customers. So they're just doing very mundane transactional tasks. So paying your bills, buying carrots. You don't need wow, you just need quick, you need easy. And all of these, I mean, what we've done in the innovation space is to start to, rather than do things, you know, plotted by persona and demographic, is to start to do customer journeys based on goal and intention state, and then drop down into where can we start to signpost the customer to the right channel to reach their goal. I think, you know, I mentioned chat, and I do think there's immense amounts of growth in chat, but whenever you start to talk about chat, you always end up talking about chatbots, or at least I do. Now, we're going to hear a lot more from Tamsin about chatbots later, but so I'm not going to dwell on the topic, but I think, again, we're going through a parallel in the evolution of IVR with chatbots at the moment, I think, because they're becoming IVR for digital. And if you remember those, you know, IVRs where you used to get stuck in an infinite loop, or you could never find the right option and then it would cut you off, that's where a lot of chatbots are at the moment. Now, there are some utterly brilliant chatbots out there that have been deployed appropriately in the customer journey, but there are also quite a lot of bad bots. And again, I think that's showing in the data. So again, how do we create a good customer experience? How do we integrate the bot into the contact center so that if it fails, it skills-based routes the session to the agent, and also what's been said to the agent so that they can pick it up seamlessly. So all of those, I think, are the recipe for a good bot experience. Video is growing, obviously. This was quite an interesting one. 85% of customers said that they'd be willing to use video chat. Now, I don't think that means video chat is just going to dominate the industry, because I don't think it does. We did do a study on video a couple of years ago showing it does have an incredibly powerful niche, and that niche has become very apparent in the pandemic. So healthcare is the obvious one. Financial advice, that had been growing before the pandemic. Things like remote diagnostics, we do a lot in BT on that. So literally being able to take control of the camera and the light on your smartphone, so that we can say to the customer, obviously with the customer's permission, we can say to the customer, show me what wires you've got plugged in, and we could do an AI overlay on that, because it's all standard wiring and sockets to make sure that the customer has everything that they need plugged in the right places to get their broadband working. And obviously, you know, that's a great experience. So that kind of stuff I think is very compelling. I don't think we're going to be using video as a panacea. I think we might when it matters, when you like to see the white of the eyes. Then I think that the interesting trend I've been talking about for a while is around using AI and machine learning to create, firstly, a personalized experience, which Amazon and Netflix have been doing for many years. That's the first step. The second one, which I think is significant, is really around proactivity. So rather than the customer having to tell us what's going on, can we tell the customer before they need to contact us? So it's pushing demand out rather than being reactive to demand. And I actually think, I mean, this is a really interesting area. It obviously relies on customers sharing their data, and under GDPR, they have to give you consent. So they must actually realize that there is something in this me economy. If I give you my data, I get something back for it. But I think in the bot space, especially, proactive bots actually work really, really well, much better than reactive ones. And the reason is the bot starts the conversation. So you've instantly bound it. And then if you've got a bounded conversation, it's far easier for a bot to have it. And again, you know, obviously link it back to the contact center if things go horribly wrong. So I think that's a really interesting one as we get, you know, Internet of Things, edge computing, smart everything. How can we use that data to personalize, be proactive, and then potentially be predictive, although that can be creepy. So that's customer view. Agent view, I think, was more fascinating, to be honest. So the agents we asked, I think, firstly, agents had felt that during the pandemic that they had become very significant as the front line, as very, you know, they had a purpose. They were helping customers through a difficult time. However, they were telling us that they were seeing more difficult, complex and emotive inquiries from customers who were often angry, stressed and rude, and also not listening. It was actually quite shocking the amount of things that customers were doing whilst actually interacting with the contact center, from driving to eating to doing anything but listen to the conversation, frankly. So I think this drove home, firstly, the fact that the agent role, certainly in a time of crisis, becomes pivotal, often very difficult. I think it also drove home the fact that you probably need to summarize the conversation, particularly on those complex conversations, back to the customer. Obviously, chat does that, but how do we use other channels? If it's the phone channel, how do we kind of just summarize the conversation and send it to the customer if they are simply not listening? This is the interesting bit, though. There seem to be some very significant differences between the UK, the US and India. Now, it could have been a question of timing here, but the UK came significantly lower in terms of colleague satisfaction, anxiety, and also just simply feeling that their colleagues were sort of helping them and an understanding of their situation. There was also a perception in the UK that staff turnover was low. Now, that might be seen to be good, but if you feel as if you're trapped in a job, it isn't. Now, why is this? We have been trying to figure out, and I'd be really interested to hear your opinions as well. But firstly, a sense of timing. We actually did this during a lockdown in the UK. So it could have been lockdown fatigue that was a factor. We did think home working might be. Now, India, there wasn't a lot of home working, but the US there was. And we weren't seeing significant differences between home-worked agents and non-home-worked agents. So I don't think it's home working that is the problem here. I think the UK potentially just may have been in lockdown fatigue, but there may be other factors playing in there as well. And then finally, back to our conversation about hybrids. Yeah, I think the cat's out of the bag for work from home. Frankly, working from home and contact centers, I think, goes together very well. Our first trials of work from home contact center agents were back in 1992, believe it or not. And for a certain population, I think it's worked very well. Not for everybody. And I think factors like, do you have the right space? If you're younger, potentially you're in a shared house. You don't have the benefit of being able to swivel your chair around and yell across the contact center as anyone else found this. So certainly, you know, there's an emphasis on collaboration and knowledge and training. All of that we have to put in, but we are seeing 71% of agents saying that they would not necessarily want to work from home permanently, but at least work from home some of the time, which does mean that we do have a hybrid, and that's got a lot of pressures from things like team leaders. I think team leaders have a much harder job when some of the team is remote and some of the team is physical, because they have to make sure that they treat everyone fairly and they manage everyone fairly regardless of where they are. And that's, I think, the foundations of that hybrid model. So phew, that was a really quick skim through the data. I am going to stop sharing now because I know we do need to move on to Paul.
Thank you very much for that, Nicola. In the chat room, if you could write in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about Nicola's presentation? I mean, hard to narrow it down, but I love stats just as much as you do. So, you know, 82% of people could not purchase a product or make a change, you know, choose a delivery slot or pay for an order, you know, quite a shocking statistic. 77% of consumers want organizations to offer different channels, and 85% of people want to use video chat to contact an organization after self-service hasn't worked. You know, so very much for me all about, you know, thinking about those future possibilities. So thank you very much for that, Nicola. We're going to come across to our chat room and just go through a few predictions and questions that our audience members have. So Gail has sent in a prediction saying chatbots and mobile chatbots will be at the forefront of call center training. A very interesting one. Oh, Paul, agree, interested in that one. What are your thoughts then?
Yeah, I think Tamsin will cover this anyway, but I think the ability to augment and make the agent's job easier, back to some of the things that Nicola was saying about actually it is a hard job, and you know, inquiries are going to get more complex. So no, I would echo that. You know, well done, Gail.
Brilliant. So Rob said flexibility will be a key feature of the future of the contact center. Nicola, agreeing with that one as well?
Oh yeah, and I think you get a lot of benefits around flexibility. Things like split shifts are much easier to schedule if you don't actually have to commute in and out. Yeah, I think that and you can sometimes recruit very differently as well. So you know, people that have complex lives, you can start to recruit again if you're not relying on them continuously having to come to a centralized location.
Well, and geography, then it means, you know, the world is your oyster rather than having to cope with people in the local vicinity and things.
Yeah, with provisos around data, because that can be the complex.
Oh, yeah. So Gary said digital adoption will be the norm. So we've had a question in from Vanessa, which is, what is your prediction of the voice channel, particularly on how companies route interactions to their associates? Tamsin, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this one?
Well, you know, I don't think voice is going away ever. And I think the prediction I'd have for, you know, how companies are routing and even how agents are trained up and to handle the contacts that are coming in, it's not just going to be those synchronous phone calls you take one at a time, but agents and companies are going to be routing multiple different types of contacts and interactions. And so for agents, their job's changing because it's not just picking up one phone call at a time. It may be handling a phone call, but also responding to an email or a chat or chats, and handling those synchronous and asynchronous kind of interactions. I don't think the voice is going away ever. So I think it's going to be that blend of, voice plus the digital channels, whether that's social media or, the old style digital of email, right? We still all use email. And so I think there's just going to be that blend. And the routing is going to become more complex, but yet maybe more simplified, if you have a consolidated way of dealing with it and having it all kind of coming into one place and being routed from there.
Well, thank you very much for that. We'll be coming back to more top tips and questions later on. But Paul, I think now's a perfect chance to take us through your slides.
Okay, let me just bring up my slides. Up to full screen. Okay, so I'm going to bridge from where Nicola led us to by saying, well, if these are the predictions for the future, then how do you take the variety of channels that you have and how do you join them together seamlessly and actually end up delivering excellent customer service for less? And I think there's a lot of the research which is around, it starts by understanding what the customer is trying to achieve. And I do very much like the research, and I followed it for a number of years around the notion of visionary utilitarians and customers in crisis. And you'll see how I think you can start to determine the right channel based on that intent. I also want to give us a perspective around what can we learn from those that are pioneering. And for many years, I've been part of various awards and I've been a judge. And I'm going to give you a couple of case studies around who's doing some really pioneering and innovative things that are award-winning currently. And then lastly, because I'd like to keep things pragmatic, is I'm actually going to give you a real mystery shopping example about how all these channels come together. So this is a variation of, in fact, an earlier version of the research that Nicola shared. So basically, we've got our three different types of user, three states of mind: the positive, the neutral, and the negative, and they're doing various customer journey tasks. And I think what you can do is begin to think about how you actually match that to a particular channel. So the first channel is those things that are ideally self-serve. So this is where we start to get some economies in terms of reducing cost to serve. And I think that applies to the visionaries when they're in their kind of research mode. They are going to be very much compliant and find it helpful to be able to consume self-serve. And likewise, the utilitarians who are just basically doing the basics. So they want to pay for stuff, they don't need to speak to anybody. They just want to kind of get it done. I think then there's also another factor emerging, and we'll touch upon this in a second, which is, does everything need to be handled by an agent? And actually, is there a role that helping customers can play? And I think that's an area that is definitely going to be part of strategies in the future, and definitely going to be a kind of a sort of parallel track to the contact center of the future. And in that example, again, your visionaries who want to basically get reassurance or to check their understanding, again, to have that peer support is something that I've certainly seen is definitely valued. So that's an intent to kind of look out for. And last but not least are those customers who just need to speak to someone in order to get something done. So I think this very much lends itself to the contact center agents of the future. And I'll speak a little bit in a moment around how we can support them. So let's just take each of those three scenarios and drill into it. So the first one was self-service. This is a screen grab from Amazon, I think about 10 years ago. And they were pioneering at that time around the notion of intent. So they were basically presenting a context-driven form, because chatbots hadn't been invented in those days. And they were getting to understand, firstly, what is the customer and which product are they using? Then secondly, understanding the product, which customer journey were they in, and on which process were they attempting to complete. There was the option to push them some self-service knowledge. And if that didn't resolve the inquiry, they were then triaging to the right channel. And in those days, they were using 3, although I think there's a certain psychology around you only ever give a user 3 choices. If you give them 10 choices, you just make it worse for them. So I think in those early days, Amazon were right on the money in terms of actually trying to triage the customer to the right outcome based on their intent. And these days, we're now seeing that built out in chatbots. And I'll leave Tamsin to talk about some of the emerging technology behind that. The second scenario was around how customers can help customers. And I first became aware of this again in a similar time frame. And this was the mobile phone provider GigCX. So they're basically an offshoot of O2, and they talked very much about, rather than they calling their customers, they called them members. And the notion was that members help members and members recruit members. So they initiated this idea of extrinsic rewards for customers helping customers. And this was quite a kind of pioneering activity all those years ago. And when I judged them about 5 years ago, I worked out that for the subscription-based, the subscriber-based customer base that GigCX had, they should have a contact center of actually 800 agents. They had 80. So 90% of the work was being done by members helping members. And that was completely eye-opening to me. And I think now we're beginning to see technology solutions. It's even now got its own phrase. It's now called GigCX. So GigCX is about providing an on-demand way in which customers can help customers. And they do that in a way that's much more than just a community. It's much more than just an online experience. It's about chat, it's about messaging, it's about routing through to people who can help you across all stages of the customer journey. So the first of our award winners goes back to a case study from the end of last year, which is actually how eBay start to use the customers helping customers. And they've done it with a technology company called Limitless, who I think are probably the kind of UK's lead in this area. Now, what's interesting about this story is it all started when lockdown first happened. So if we remember back, we were suddenly then told to stay at home. So a number of us as consumers started to go in the garage and clear up spare rooms because we had time on our hands. We'd find stuff, and eBay became very appealing, particularly if we hadn't used it before. So eBay saw an increase in demand. At the same time, their offshore agents in the Philippines were kind of struggling to then not work in the centers and work from home. So they had some resource gaps. And they started then to kind of skim off some of that demand and use sellers helping sellers. And that was successful because the customer sat scores were high and the resolution rates were high. So it was working, the mechanics of the service worked. But what was fascinating was when they looked back 6 months later, and they're a very data-driven company, they looked at what happened to those new sellers after they had engaged with an existing seller. And what they found was, compared to a control group who didn't interact in that way, that those that were being helped by their peers, they sold more frequently. So all the commercial metrics suddenly were actually working in their sort of favor. And as a commercial company, gross merchandising revenue is like really important. So where eBay is now is they took what was a service solution and they're now seeing it as a commercial solution. And that, I think, is the power of where customers helping customers could potentially lead us in the sort of future. The third area is around how we can help agents. And I will just give a shout out to Tamsin's company, Nice, who have a very smart piece of technology called Neva. And I've certainly seen a client implement this where essentially Neva integrates to the agent desktop and it knows where the customer and the agent are within a transaction. And it can do things like, RPA, so the robotic process automation. It can kind of cut and paste and save some time. But the power of it is really to be able to make suggestions, so to make that agent's job easier. And so it's building out some of the next best action, some of the CRM types of capabilities. But for my best practice example, I'm going to go into quite a surreal world. Now, I would never have thought of this, because this is kind of swimming against the tide in terms of a new way of thinking about things. And this is Microsoft. They have, obviously, as a global business, the kind of conventional thinking that you need to support customers in native language. But what they did was take AI and actually train AI to be able to translate foreign languages back to English. And they therefore took some English language agents who were experienced and were capable, and with AI tools got them to answer queries in a range of 8 different languages. And guess what? The CSAT scores for the best agents using AI to translate from language ended up being the kind of champion solution. So I would never have imagined that AI would be used as a translation tool. But then I suppose now I thought, now I understand it, or now I see that that's happening. We think about what we do if we ourselves want to do something. We go to Google, we use Google Translate, and actually it is extremely accurate. So there's definitely a knowledge bank out there that actually allows us to do that. And to finish, I just want to kind of bring us back to a real world experience. And show you that actually the world will still need contact center agents in the future. So this is my wife, Louise. During lockdown, she ordered a mirror and she bought it from Amazon, and it was an overseas supplier, and they had some supply problems, and they had to email to say that they were no longer able to supply the goods and they would provide a refund. Well, fast forward a few weeks and she hadn't had the monies, so she went back onto the Amazon website and into her account and was presented with a chatbot, which effectively found her order, said that she was eligible for a refund, and said that it would actually process it. Still, monies were not received, so she went back on the website, and all the time it was just leading her back to the chatbot. She couldn't find a way to escalate. So we had a quick chat, and I'm aware of a very effective complaints management capability for you as consumers. If you haven't used it, then sort of check out Resolver. And Resolver for Amazon actually had a phone number. So Louise rang up and was dealt with by an agent who had full access to the account, could see that she'd interact twice with the chatbots, could see that her account hadn't been, the business seller hadn't refunded the monies, and with immediate effect resolved it by doing that. And in fact, whilst Louise was on the phone, the email came through confirming that, that the monies were actually being processed. So the contact center saved the day. Now, this wasn't a bad chatbot. It was just the end-to-end process hadn't quite been kind of squared away. It would have been nice if some more proactivity had actually happened. So what you do in terms of yourselves as implementing these technologies is always remember you need to be driven by the customer experience and the end-to-end experience. And if you do that, then the world is your oyster. Rachel, back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Paul. I'm just going to put up in the chat room, if you could write in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about Paul's presentation? Paul, brilliant. I mean, I really enjoyed, the sellers helping sellers, the peer-to-peer support, the, customers helping customers, to get faster response times than asking a community. I think the 90% of the work done by members of GigCX was a very impressive statistic and something I'm definitely taking away. And also, the bit you were talking about with Microsoft, that by using Unbubble, they were actually outperforming agents working in their native language. I mean, a very impressive kind of way of using technology. So thank you very much for sharing your tips and everything. Going over to our chat room just quickly. So we've had a prediction in from Michael who said, I think with the new open WhatsApp API will change the chat approach with customers. Nicola, you're nodding along.
Yeah, I mean, the demand we've been having around WhatsApp has been quite phenomenal because frankly, we're all using it. So yeah, and the problem previously has been it wasn't so open. It wasn't easy to do it. So yeah, I think the API is going to make a huge amount of difference.
Brilliant. Kate sent an opinion saying, I believe that AI offers a phenomenal opportunity to help expand the skill set of people. We can utilize real human skills more effectively to improve customer experience. Yeah, Tamsin, you're nodding along with that one.
Absolutely. You know, I just think it's just enriching your skill sets, you know, like that copy pasting to fill out a form at the end of, you know, to update the client records, or you know, I need to copy from this and to paste to that's not a skill anyone really wants to put on their resume. But, you know, leaving that to the machines, you know, letting that be automated, and then spending the time, you know, building rapport with customers and, you know, building those relationships. That's where machines can't replace that.
Well, I think that's a great opportunity to hand over to you and have you take us through your presentation.
Absolutely. Are you going to share on
Yeah,
your
I'm hoping Jonty in the background. Ah, there we go. As if by magic.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, hello, everyone. Hello again. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. Again, my name's Tamsin, and I'm from the product marketing team at CX1. I'm excited to be here to talk about the future, so we'll just jump right in. You know, the good news is this is not the future of the contact center. We can say goodbye to this. If AI means anything, it means less sticky notes maybe. Although I'm a big fan, I just restocked on my new colors this week, but still, you know, and the next, I want to say, this is also not the future of the contact center. You know, when you say the words artificial intelligence in a contact center, you'll likely see a lot of concerned faces. And maybe one of them is yours, one of you in the audience, you know. Let's talk a little bit, I want to spend some time talking about what's the reason for that concern around AI. I think the big thing is that change can be really scary, and transformation is about more than technology. It's also about people and managing, you know, that change management is managing, you know, people management as well, right? And so, you know, going to our next slide, I want to talk about, you know, agents, supervisors and managers, and executives, and those who own the purse strings, right? And what does AI and automation mean to them? About maybe the last 5 years, I've spent in contact centers as a trainer, and certainly I never, you know, was training on anything to do with AI. There was some speech analytics about 5 years ago, but it was very manual still, manual rules based. And so this is still a very new thing, although we've heard this buzzword around for a while. AI is still very, very new. And so people will, you know, this change, and they're going to have concerns, right? I can understand that. So, you know, agents may view AI as a bit of a threat. They may worry that AI is going to replace them entirely, that it'll take their jobs away and their livelihood. And then we look at the supervisors and the managers. They may be concerned that, you know, this is just yet another thing I've got to deal with. It sounds really complicated. I've never been really much of a science project person. I don't have a lot of time to spend trying to understand and manage this extra thing. And they might also be worried that it'll have a negative, you know, impact on the customer experience as well. And then there's the executives that are in charge of the purse strings, and they need to ensure before they go spending on the latest and greatest gadget that the investment will pay off for the company and for them. So, you know, you really need to show your agents, your managers, your executives really how AI will really help them and what's in it for them. I mean, this is like that for anything you're not even just trying to sell, but just trying to convince somebody that it might help them, you know, make it less scary and make it more personal. How is this going to really, really help you? So it's just like convincing, you know, anyone to embrace something new. You need to show them what's in it for them. So let's dive in with getting our agents on board. So starting with our customer service agents, the first thing you need to do is is show them that AI is not about replacing them. And I truly, truly believe this. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of humans in customer service because it's human service, right? And yeah, you want that convenience, and everyone wants to save time here and there. Maybe not doesn't want to talk to a human every time. There'll always be that niche for the convenience, but humans are irreplaceable for so many reasons, sentiment and emotion and all of these things. So I just don't see that changing. So, AI is not really a competitor. It's more of like a personal assistant that can help agents be more productive and more focused. I mean, just think of, none of us are agents, but think of all the little tools that we use on our phones and things to remind us to get to appointments and such. It's helping us be maybe not super efficient, okay, but more efficient, and get to where we need to go to on time. And AI is really, really good at handling repetitive tasks like that copy paste we talked about, like filling in a form or collecting customer information. If the customer's already spoken to the IVR and shared some details, that information can be captured and it can be, filled into a CRM system without anyone having to actually type anything. Or if, God forbid, a customer having to repeat the information to a human agent. Nobody likes doing that. So there's so many things that AI capabilities, whether it's RPA, or a agent assistant, a virtual assistant, a chatbot, AI can be used in all these ways to really help to make an agent's life a little bit easier and much more efficient, and I think more enjoyable even. Let's move into with our managers and our supervisors as well. So with this group, you really need to show them how using AI can help save them time and improve not only their team's performance, but also their own performance as well. Supervisors have to juggle so many things, and adding something new into the mix is going to feel overwhelming to them, to anybody really, right? And, one of you mentioned, about supervisors aren't always now with a remote workforce, often they can't look over and notice that one of their agents has got their hand waving and going, I need some help. An agent can't swivel around and ask for the supervisor to come do some over-the-shoulder coaching or maybe give them out assistance physically. So, supervisors have that challenge now. Where AI can really help, though, is by providing sort of a heat map to the supervisor on what agents may be struggling. And how do we know that? Well, the AI can detect things like customer sentiment and frustration, or even agent soft skills, for example, like building rapport. AI can detect these things, can be trained to detect these specific things, crosstalk, and effective questioning. These aren't easy things even for a human supervisor to say that you did really good at that. You're a good, effective questioner. But AI can detect these things, can be sensitive to that, and pop in and either inform a supervisor, even assist the agent, so the supervisor's not having to rush over virtually to assist all of their agents, that the AI can be there to assist. AI could also be used for supervisors and agents to help them by helping to simplify and take the guesswork out of scheduling and the forecasting. So really simplify and shorten that whole process. No more manual spreadsheets. Goodness, back in the day, 5 years ago, that was get the spreadsheets out. Let's see what the schedule's like, and crunching all those numbers. You don't need to do that so much anymore because AI loves to handle that kind of data and can handle it very efficiently. Let's get into our executives next. They want to see, they're interested in seeing the numbers. So you're going to have to show them where the savings, AI can deliver. Show them the reduction per interaction cost. So you want to remember to multiply any savings out per day, per week, per month, per year to make those numbers really impactful. And show them how much money that they can save by using AI to drive higher agent satisfaction. It's going to help on attrition numbers. When your agents feel more satisfied with their jobs, they're happier to come to work because they're just killing it, because they're feeling so efficient, because they have the right tools and software to help them. You can also show this group how adding conversational AI and to self-service, like a chatbot or an IVR, that can increase adoption and containment of self-service. We all want self-service success rates. You know, containment sounds it's kind of a fussy word, isn't it? But what you really want is the success. You're driving the success of the self-service with the customer success of in the self-service. So, you know, putting in a chatbot might be great, but conversational chatbot, worth the investment. Why? Customers like dealing with something that's a little bit more conversational and less staticky. And then, you know, showing the extra revenue that company can gain by using AI to deliver better customer experience, because customer experience, of course, if that is positive, customers are going to tell their friends about it. That's customer loyalty and retention and all of that. So, you know, you really don't want to hide, you know, the savings, the potential savings that you can get, and the revenue and the return on investment that you can really drive with AI. It's about showing that that type of information, sharing that type of information with the executives. You know, we've got some really great white papers. I'm going to share a link at the end that can really show some of these numbers to you, and really great to download. On the next slide, I just want to go really quickly, I'm going to leave the charts to Nicola because you're the chart queen. But for here, I want to share a little bit of data we have with our nice CX1 CX Benchmark. And there's a link there in the presentation. You can download this, lots of great details. But just to share, 66% of the businesses that we surveyed this time, and this is globally, but these are UK numbers, 66% are at least using one AI-powered channel. So that's something to consider. You know, the executives want to know where their executive friends are also investing, right? And so again, it's about, you know, making it personal and making sure that people understand what's in it for them. And, you know, they may be leery about investing in something that's super, super new, be the first to do something, but when they see, you know, that there are other businesses that are investing in these ways, that can be really helpful. So just to round up a little bit about NICE CX1, you know, we have a CX1 platform that consolidates all the tools that you need for your contact center. We have fused AI through all our capabilities. There's chatbots, conversational IVR, AI-powered analytics, workforce management. I've mentioned just a tiny bit of them today. We also have a fantastic new tool called RealTime Interaction Guidance that provides agents with that coaching in real time. It takes the pressure off of the supervisors as well. And just finally, we've got, well, I say thank you, a link to our resource center. I wanted to share that with you because it's full of fantastic free resources that you can download. There's some really great fun topic white papers on AI as well, and chatbots. So welcome to, please check us out. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for that, Tamsin. I'm just going to share my screen and put up a poll and ask, you know, would you like to see a demonstration of some of the things that Tamsin has talked about? Please just tick that. Brilliant presentation. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed, you know, seeing what does AI mean for people across the business, and how to get the buy-in from all the different levels. You know, agents can use it like a PA, you know, and thinking about all the KPIs it can help. So, you know, lowering AHT, improving CSAT and FCR, you know, a really interesting side of it. And also I thought that the stat about 66% of businesses using at least one AI-powered channel, up from 50% in 2019, was a really interesting statistic. So thank you very much for that one. So back to our chat room, I'm going to share a few final ones. So Dennis sent in an opinion. The call center of the future will need to be nimble, adaptive and flexible to respond to faster changing customer needs. This capacity to change will require of employees the underlying technology and the knowledge database as client expectations evolve. Nicola, what are your thoughts on this one?
I can only agree, really. I think we've seen how we need to be nimble. I mean, we've responded to a pandemic, so you know, and often that was. I mean, I was amazed at some of the deployments that happened almost overnight, lifting and shifting whole contact centers to home, and that was an amazing feat. So well done if you did that. But I think, you know, we're going to face a lot of other challenges, and yes, we do need to be very nimble. And to be honest, the technology we have at the moment helps, because things like cloud and the connectivity we have and the collaboration tools that we have, it's almost the perfect time to have a pandemic technologically, isn't it? Because we can be a lot more nimble by using those kind of technologies.
Yeah, and Tamsin, are you happy to see this one then?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm just laughing at what Nicholas said, the perfect time to have a pandemic for the technology. And about the nimble, you know, I think that there's just, we're looking at channel diversity. We're looking at more diverse skills for the agents to have, you know, it's much different now having to manage multiple interactions at once, you know, handling maybe having a chat conversation and being on the phone, perhaps responding to an email. It sounded to me a bit crazy at the beginning. Like, how could anybody possibly do that? But we all do it all the time. Like, I'm having a chat with my mom while I'm watching a show and listening to a podcast or something. You know, you can handle multiple things. And that's what agents are going to need and contact centers, you know, businesses need to be more nimble. And that's, I think that's what the future holds.
Yeah, thank you. I think it also goes back to Nicholas, you know, what are people phoning into the contact center doing while they're waiting in a queue or things like that? I think it's the same the other way as well. So Lisa's got a question. Do you think the customer helping customers can also work within B2B? Paul, I think this is actually a question for you.
Yes. So yeah, thanks for that, Lisa. The answer's yes. So I've been working with Sage, the payroll and accountancy business, and they are pioneering in terms of sort of the sort of B2B scenario. The results are very similar to sort of B2C. A lot of what Sage are doing, which is interesting, is they are moving a lot more to become a subscription-based business. So essentially, it's now a kind of more of a kind of pay-as-you-go service. They do a lot of incentives to get people to actually adopt and use their products. And they're certainly seeing during the acquisition stage and also during the free trial period, the notion of being able to reach out and speak to another business, perhaps even in the similar sector, who've kind of been through the same journey. They're actually seeing that as you know, very, 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 very powerful. So yeah, the answer is yes.
Brilliant, thank you, Paul. So we've had a tip in saying change is difficult, but can be eased by the confidence shown by leaders. Nicola, I think, you know, very important to show that from the leadership team.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend hours on this, because I think I've done quite a lot on leadership, especially during the pandemic, and the fact that, you know, the spotlight got shone on leaders really on this, to keep people going, to you know, reinforce the sense of purpose, to actually be very open and honest with people, show a lot more empathy. And it's been kind of brilliant, because although you know, you can't lead by walking around or sit by coaching or anything, but I think we've all got a growing appreciation, because I have met pretty much every member of my team's family now. I probably wouldn't necessarily be all based in an office. So I've met their dog, I've met their cat, husband, wives, you know, you name it, I've met them. So it's actually given me a flavour of the person outside the office, and I think that's actually quite healthy as well from a leadership perspective. But leaders are key. I mean, they really are key. So and I think we don't necessarily, particularly as we go into hybrid, we need to train them to manage quite a complex hybrid environment. So yeah, definitely, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, Tamsin, I think, you know, technology can certainly help with those sorts of things, of, you know, making sure, because there's no, you know, maybe a virtual contact center, of not being able to walk around.
Absolutely. You know, just thinking, you know, how teachers even had to adapt from teaching physically in a classroom to teaching over Zoom. you know, it's just, yes, I can still teach, I can still see you, but, and the technology, absolutely, to your point, Rachel, you know, absolutely helps seeing your students, not just hearing your teacher's voice over a speakerphone, right? That really helped, but then it also takes that, that different skill set and that confidence coming from that side, whether it's an agent you're speaking to because you're talking to your bank, or you're, you know, you're talking about you're dialing into a medical center, you know, and you're talking to someone there, or whether it's a teacher, you want that confidence in that leader. It's so important.
Brilliant. And I think we've got time for one final opinion from Claire, which is contact centers will see an increased reliance on and need for analytics and automation to work symbiotically. There we go. Dear, oh dear. Final one to do. So unfortunately, we've reached the top of the hour. So we'd just like to ask in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about the webinar? If you could leave that. So today's winning tip comes from Nelson, who said, we have to be aware of doing multiple interactions at the same time. Just because we can reduce the quality in one of the channels, multitasking is not effective at all, says recent studies. So we'll be in touch after the webinar. Just a reminder, if you can complete the survey, it's only 3 questions long. It just helps us develop our webinar program. And a reminder that there will be a replay and slides available later on this afternoon on the following link, callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. And I just want to say thank you very much to our brilliant panel of speakers for a wonderful webinar. To Nicola Millard, thank you very much for your insights and all your graphs and everything.
Thank you.
To Paul Wield, thank you so much for all your insights as well.
You're very welcome.
And to Tamsin Donnan, thank you very much for your insights as well. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, we're taking a break for the summer, so we will be back, I think, the 30th of September. So we look forward to seeing you then. But thank you very much for joining us today. Goodbye, all.
Cheers.